It is become a hello. Okay, it's a cradle story, and hence many people have taken it as part of the traditional Hindu mythology, which some people take it seriously, some people don't take it seriously. Particularly, the historians have not taken this seriously, the story of Dhruva. But if we see the story of Dhruva as it's recorded in our texts, I'm referring to the Sanskrit texts mainly, the Vedas, the epics, the Purana, and also other ancillary texts. Over a couple of millennia, actually we will see nearly 5 millennia, Dhruva is mentioned with a lot of twists and turns. And what it turns out is Dhruva, the pole star, we will see how the scientific issues come into picture here. It only represents that the precision of the Earth's axis is something inviolable. And whether somebody knows the reason or not, the culture has to go through it. And the Hindu culture has adjusted to that in its own way. This is what I'm going to present. So the legend is very well known. I'm not going to repeat it. This comes up in the Vishnu Purana and also in the Brahmanda Purana, that the child Dhruva goes to forest for doing penance, and Vishnu appears to him, and then finally he gets a boon, and the boon says that after the life of Dhruva is actually here as a human being, a prince, son of king called Uttanapada, that Dhruva will remain as a pole star, fixed in the northern sky, near Vishnu. There are all double meanings for this in the text. We will see that how it evolves in our text, this story. And he also gets another boon, that his mother Suniti would also remain near him, that is near her son through eternity. This is the astral legend. So it has a meaning which those people, for some reason, put up as a story. And the story has come down to us to this day. Maybe if it was put up as a fact, it might have vanished. So they created a story or a legend, and the legend is very interesting. Now, this story can be traced to the Puranas, as I said, with considerable variations. But when the Puranas were written down, that is somewhere in 300 to 500 AD, as it is said, the oral tradition was scripted down during the Gupta period. There was no pole star at all in the North Celestial Pole. So how did these people know about a pole star? Or was it some previous information the Puranas wrote down? And the present day pole star, what we know, what we see in the sky as the pole star and show it to our children, was not there at all at the pole. And we will see what this means. Modern astronomy tells this very clearly, that the present Polaris, what is called Polaris, became the pole star only around 600 CE, that is about 400 years back. There was no star during the Gupta period, when it is said the major Puranas were written down. That is about 300 to 500 AD. And even before that, for a long period, there was no pole star. Now, why is the word Dhruva so important here? Dhruva means fixed in Sanskrit. Even in that sense, even now it is used. And the Puranas described only a fixed celestial object. It says fixed. It is not moving, unmoving. So many things are there. We will see a little bit later on. But before the Puranas, Dhruva is mentioned in the Yajurvedic texts. And also Mahabharata refers to Dhruva, and several other texts refer to a star and refer to it Dhruva by name Dhruva also. So the question comes up, is it possible that our Sanskrit texts know about two pole stars? A pole star which became what we know as Polaris now only 400 years back. And there was another pole star long back. Is this believable? That would be the question. If it is believable, what is the evidence that we have got? So let us see what modern astronomy has to say on this. If there is a star in the northern celestial pole, and for people in the northern hemisphere, such a star would look fixed in the night. That means the stars nearby may go around through the night, but this star as a point will remain fixed. Maybe a slight variation may be there, but the eye will not be able to recognize this. But this changes due to a phenomenon called the precession of equinoxes, and that makes new stars to come to the northern celestial pole. I'm showing a short strip here. This is Earth. This is the northern direction. This is Sun. This is the red circle is the ecliptic. And because Earth is inclined at 23 degrees, is an inclination. These two intersection points are the equinoctial points. And you can see what we can see in the northern sky is this. But over a period of 27,000 years, slowly this keeps on changing, and people will look at different northern stars. And this picture shows that this is the star now. You start from here, go back 27,000 years. There is one star here along the polar circle. So before this, there was a star, and that star, modern astronomy says, is what is called Thuban. And this is an official picture of the Astronomical Union, the sky, the northern sky. This is the North Celestial Pole, what we would call 90 degrees declination. This is Polaris now. And there is another green line here, which you can see. This is called the constellation Draco, or Draconis, as it is called. And the previous pole star, which I showed on the other diagram, was this. It's called Alpha Draconis astronomically, or a general name is Thuban. This was the pole star around 3000 BC. So my submission or my analysis or my proposition is that, is it possible that our ancient texts, Puranas particularly, when they talk of the pole star being fixed, since there was no pole star during the Gupta period, or say, let us say in the beginning of the Common Era, they were referring to something else based on a societal memory, a memory which is common to all the people, and based on it, they had transmitted some information. Now, this is very clearly possible. I'm once again showing the same figure so that I can fix up my boundary conditions here clearly. So this is the polar circle, the red circle which you see. The stars, any visible star on this could be called a Dhruva or would remain fixed in the same place for people on Earth. Now, the astronomical, that short strip I showed you, shows that this is the present Dhruva, 2000 AD. Then you go back, this is 0, that is the 0 period of the Common Era. Then you go back, this is minus 2000, say roughly 2000 BC, you can say. Go back somewhere here, this is about 3000 BC, there is a pole star here. So if at all there is evidence for what I am claiming, that the Hindus knew two pole stars, what happened? This is minus 4000, this is 3000 BC. 3000 BC to 2000 AD, there is a 5,000 year period. This becomes the major historical sector of this long circle of 27,000 years. If it is true, there should be references to this, the movement of the star or some other star coming in like that. Now you can quickly see here, in the Vishnu Purana, Dhruva is said to be along with his mother. There is a star here, a small star you can see, with Thuban, the modern Thuban. So this is an astronomical condition which is given. Now, what is the oldest text which talks of this Dhruva is the next question. There is a text called the Taittiriya Aranyaka of the Yajurveda, which is well known, which is even studied to this day. It refers to a constellation called Shishumara. You can see this is this blue figure, what you are seeing, which looks like a long serpent or a dragon or a whale. Now, the Arabs, they took it as a lizard when they viewed it, not in 3000 BC, but at a later period. Whereas our people took it as a Shishumara. Shishumara is a whale. And there are figures which I can show how it looks like. And then this figure is extolled in the Vedic texts. I will show you the mantras also. First, what is this Taittiriya Aranyakam? Taittiriya Aranyakam is the Yajurvedic text printed somewhere in 1900. So anybody can look into this. This is used in the Vedic Pathshalas even now in India and even in other places for many of the esoteric things. What this text says, about 25% of it is astral, or it refers to the sky. In whatever manner it may do, it refers to the sky. First, it says, what are the things which are needed to understand Aditya Mandalam? Aditya Mandalam is sun. Then later on, it goes to explain some of the stars, the Saptarshis, and another star called Agastya. The mantra is Rishayaha Sapta Atrishchete Sarve Atrayo Agastyascha Nakshatre Shankruto Avasan. Now, in other words, they took the stars to be representing the Saptarshis. Saptarshi, I will not go into the details of that, called Ursa Major, the 7 rishis. And then Agastya. Agastya is actually a southern star. Now it is what we call Canopus. Now this Agastya is extremely important. And this is all astronomical. And this is the definition they give, that these rishis are with the stars, or the name of these stars have to be, they had taken by these names. Like, you would call something as I said, Thuban, something as by some other name, Aldebaran kind of thing. They are the names given because you need names to represent the objects. There are also other details in this text, which talks of a Mahameru. Mahameru is going to be the an imaginary mountain or an axis actually, which connects Earth with the north celestial pole, that is with Dhruva. And Dhruva is supposed to be sitting in the highest point at the tip of the Meru. That was the concept. There's the Puranic concept or the Puranic astronomical model. And this text already talks of Mahameru and also says, Kashyapaha Ashtamaha sa Mahameru na jahati. Kashyapa doesn't leave Mahameru. Well, astronomically, what it means is circumpolar. It doesn't set, it doesn't go out of a particular position. Whereas the other stars, they can set and rise, which are in the east and west. Whereas in the north, there are a set of stars which are circumpolar. Even today, it is like this. So they put the same thing in a different way. But now the most important thing is, of course, the description of the constellation called Shishumara. This comes up in the second Prapataka. Those of you who know how the Vedas are organized, there is the second Prapataka of the Aranyaka. Aranyakas are considered mystic texts. considering a lot of philosophical esoteric, not the Vedantic, so to say. The Vedanta may come in the Upanishads taken from here, but already this is mystical and hence discussed in the forest. That is generally the understanding. Now, in the second Prapataka, there is a mantra called this Swadhyaya Brahmana. This is called Swadhyaya Brahmana. That is, the people do this for their own benefit, and it is for a kind of meditation and also daily practice. Now, in the text, there are two kinds of things are shown. It's a short one here, and there is a long one here. This long one, which is in small font, is the commentary by Sayanacharya. Sayanacharya is a famous commentator on the Vedas who lived in 14th century. And his commentary is also very interesting because that is how culture has grown in our country. Through the filters of the commentators, through the filters of other subjects, the Vedic culture has come down with various branches, with various roots, various shades and colors. So we can't omit this if we have to understand what we as insiders today practice the Hinduism or Hindu culture. Now, what is this mantra about? It says, I'll just read a little bit. Dharmo Murdhanam Brahma Uttara Hanuhu Yajnaha Adara Vishnuhu Hridayam. Important, please remember this statement. Samvatsara Prajananam Ashwinam Purva Padav Atrihi Madhyam Mitravarnam Aparapadav Agnihi Puchasya Prathamam Kandam. Pucha is a tile. What is the tile? We will see that. The first part of the tile is Agni, Tata Indra. The second part is Indra, Tataha Prajapati. The third part of the tile is Prajapati. Abhayam Chaturtham. The fourth part of the tile is Abhaya, it says. This is the description of an animal. There are 14 stars here named. I will give a list of the 14 stars later on. And you may be wondering, what is this? Is this just an esoteric statement? No. The mantra itself says, Savai Esha Divyaha Shakwaraha Shishumaraha. This is the Divya Shakwara, the celestial animal called Shishumara. And this is the celestial figure on which people should meditate. That meditation is described here in the mantras. Ya evam Veda apa punarmrityam jayati, etc., etc. Then the third part of the hymn is here. Dhruvaha tvamasi, dhruvasya kshitamasi, tvam bhutanam adhipatirasi, tvam bhutanam shreshtosi. More important, tvam bhutani upaparyavartante. That means all the bodies in the universe go around you. The bhutas are not only the human beings, the animals, but all the celestial objects also go around you. That's what it says. And this Abhaya, who is the fourth, is the Dhruva of the Puranas. And the word Dhruva comes here, but the Dhruva is more for Shishumara than for a particular star. But that particular star is called Abhaya, or a fearless. And who was that fearless? It says further, Namaste Namaha Shishu Kumaraya Namaha iti. That fearless child was the Shishumara or the Shishu Kumara. And Sayana, of course, discusses this in further detail. He says, Anena Mantrena Udangmuko Bhutva Dhruva Mandalam Pashyan Shishumara Rupena Upatishte. That is, in the evening after the Sandhyopasana, you have to look in the northern direction at the Dhruva Mandala and worship this. And he also says that Kumara is the Balakaha, and for that Dhruva, let me do the Namaskara. And this has been captured and continued in our later Puranas. And that is how this picture comes up as a story of a child, a fearless child, who went to the forest and who got a boon and who also became a pole star. Now we will see this a little bit more here. The astronomical picture is here, the left and the right. This is the central pole. You remember that short film which I showed. This was the northern celestial pole. This is the Shishumara figure. I'm sorry. This is the Shishumara figure. This is the face of the animal. Dharmo Murdhanam, as the head is the Dharma, lower jaw is that, and Kratu, and all that description comes up there. And the modern picture is that of a dragon. The same thing have superposed it. So imagine instead of a dragon, a whale here. More or less, this is how people imagined this in the more ancient times. And I'm showing this because there is a view that Hindus did not represent the celestial pictures through animals, and it has come, the zodiac animals has come to Hinduism through the Greeks. That is the usual statement you see in the history of astronomy books. That is absolutely wrong. In fact, the constellations had names, the constellations had more than one star, and they had mostly animal names or some other names also. I can't go into that detail, but this is the oldest constellation name you can see somewhere around 3000 BC. It is 3000 because this cannot be a fixed pole star after that period of about 2500 or 600. I given the details here. 2830 BC, this was only 7 minutes away from the center. The present day pole star is 5 degrees away. So you can see that the eye will recognize it as fixed, even if it is 1 to 2 degrees away. But this was too close, and it remained as the pole star for the culture, for the people, for about 500 years or so on both the sides. Now, there are other things which come up. We'll not go into which was the pole star in the second millennium BC. Necessary, we will discuss it later. But now the question comes up, if there was a fixed pole stars in the Taittiriya Aranyaka, let us say some people knew, the Yajurvedic people knew, and they had made some hymns on this and passed it on to the future generations. Did anybody say this pole star is moving or is moved or is not fixed? Have they made any statement of this? Yeah, the Vedas themselves say, before we go to the Puranas, you can see there is another text called the Maitrayani Aranyaka, also of the Yajurveda. The Maitrayani Aranyaka is again, it contains a part of Upanishad also. This is a Vedantic Upanishad. And this is the beginning of, you can see the Vedantic philosophy emerging in our country. This is the first part of that, a question which is raised by a king by name Brihadrata. So Brihadrata becomes very depressed in his life, and he goes to a sage called Shakayanya and asks him several questions. I'm showing only the few important questions here in the first part. Sarvan Chedam Kshaishnam Pashyamo. He says, everything is transient in this world, great Rishi. It is as though it is like flies and mosquitoes, everything is transient. And he also says, Kechit Sudyumna, Bhuridyumna, Indradyumna, Kovalayashvo, etc. All those list of kings he gives, the Chakravartis, Ambarisha, Nanattu, Shariati, Anaren. What happened to them? They are all dead, and they have left all of this and went away. So what is the use of having all of this in the earth? Having this on the earth, he is looking for a meaning for his life. But why this, a kind of skepticism came to him? He says, very clearly he says here, Maharnavanam Shikarinam Prapatanam. It is happening, Shoshanam Maharnavanam. The oceans are getting dried up. Shikarinam Prapatanam. The mountains are falling down. The high mountains are falling down. Not only that, Dhuruvasya Prachalanam. Dhruva is moving. That is his greatest difficulty. That the other things are on the earth, they are okay. That is on the earth, something is happening. But why in the sky even that is happening? Because they consider the things which are in the sky, the celestials, are the devatas actually. And even Dhruva is moving away. And Vrashchanam Vatarajunam. Vrashchanam Vataraju means the planetary model they had at that time of the Meru, which I said about in the Taittiriya Aranyaka. All the planets, all celestial objects were connected with Dhruva, that is with the north celestial pole, through Vatarajju. There are invisible rays or invisible, threads. There you may call them invisible strings or invisible force strings or whatever you may call, but they are cut. Why they are cut? Prithivyaha sthanad apasarana. Even they are going down, up and down, because if there is a star which is fully visible and it becomes invisible, that is due to precision. We know that nowadays it can go down the horizon, but he is asking that question here. And he wants to know what is the reason for this and all that. Well, anyway, we will not go into what the Muni told him about it and how it has to be done. All this is due to Brahman and Prana and the beginning of the Vedantic philosophy here. But when did this happen? That can be roughly decided because the same Maitrayani Aranyaka has a theory. It says all Kala is due to sun. Suryo yonihi by kalasya. Surya is the reason for all time. And he also, there are so many other things, we will not go into that. And he gives Shravishthardam Agneyam Kramena Utkramena Sarpadhyam. These are the name of nakshatras, and the winter solstice started at that time. That is the Saumya part of the Ayana. Saumya is the cold season of the Ayana. They had only two Ayanas, that is the Uttarayana and the Dakshinayana. And the winter solstice point was in Shravishta, the half of the Shravishta nakshatra. And if you know the other theories of the Vedanga Jyotisha and others, and also later now the Brihad Samhita, the Siddhantic astronomy, which I will not go. During Varahamihira's time, the winter solstice was at some other point. It was in Purvashada or somewhere. Whereas in the Lagada's Vedanga Jyotisha period, it is Shravishta Adi of Shravishta, which is generally attributed to about 1300 BC. And Shravishta, half of Shravishta, that is 7 degrees before that point, in any case, relatively about 400, 500 years. Now, this is actually due to precision. They might not have known the reason for precision was the Dhruvas moving, and the Dhruvas moving of the, which Brihadrata is telling, is in the second chapter this comes up. So there is a continuity of thoughts and some important information has been contained, particularly of time, which depends on time. Because the question comes up, if Dhruva is also moving, then how did that happen? Because originally they thought Dhruva is fixed, and even sun is controlled by Dhruva. In fact, Purana says sun is controlled by Dhruva. By 2 strings he is controlled, it says. But that theory they had to give up. But anyway, this is how science grows, and they made newer and newer theories. Now, we come to the Puranas. Puranas have taken up this, preserved it, may not be in a continuous way as it happens in a university, but the Brahmanda Purana is the oldest among the Puranas, very near to the Vedic period. It says, Yoyam Chaturdasham Puche Shaishumare Vyavastitaha. This whole thing, there are about 600 verses in this text, which is astronomical and scientific. In fact, this can lead to a pre-Siddhantic astronomical model, which is the Dhruva-centric or the Meru-centric model. There are people who have written on this. That is from the religious purposes and also from other reasons, because Meru is important to Jains and also to the Buddhists. Both of them also talk of Meru, but they don't say anything about Dhruva. But Brahmanda Purana is very particular about Dhruva. And the first shloka I can see, Bhuta Sammohanam etat vadato me nibodhata pratyakshamapi drisyancha sammohayati yat praja. He says, this is something which you can say. The Sutta or the poet, he is inviting people. You come and see this, how beautiful it is. And it is mesmerizing because the person who is the 14th and who is in the tile of the Shishumara, he is the Uttanapada Putrosau. He is the son of the Uttanapada. He has become Medi Bhuto. He has become this central pillar, the Meru or the Methi. And Savai Brahmayate Nityam, he controls Chandra Aditya Grahai Saha. He controls all of this and rotates it. You come and see, he says. Well, anyway, he goes on like this, and he gives also models. Two models are given. One is the Tailepida Yatha Chakram Brahmanto Brahmayanti. It is like the oil press model he gives. There is one more is the Potter model is given. And if you wonder whether there is a relationship between this and the Vedas, that will be cleared here, because he gives all the names of the 14 stars. I'm not going to read it because it will take time. I will show a list later. And the names of the 14 stars of the constellation and the corresponding body parts making up the animal figure. Here also it is called Sakaraha Shishumarascha. The name is same, there is no other name. And there is one shloka here which is important, which I have marked. He says, one who knows the 14 stars correctly lives longer by that many years. But this is how our people taught the young students, that because the figure had to be identified. See, the situation today, if many people would not know what is Kritika, how to identify Kritika, don't know how to identify Chitra, where it is, have to look to something else. And if you see the astronomical books, you will be totally confused. And the astrologers, they will make you more confounded and confused. They just don't know. They will know only what is given in the books, not in the sky. So they said, but remember these 14 stars clearly, the animal figure. Then, every day you have to repeat the shlokas, whether it makes meaning or not. I'm telling this because for a very particular historical reasons to which I come. And here also it is said, Puche Agnischa Mahendrascha Marichaha Kashyapo Dhruva. The Pucha is, remember the Taittiriya Aranyaka, the Pucha of the Shishumara. Same thing, the same 4 stars, the names are slightly different. Tarakaha Shishumarasya Nastam Yanti Chatushtayam. These 4, they don't set. That means they are circumpolar. So by the time the Purana was written, some of the stars of Shishumara they could set, but the last 4 could not. The last 4 were circumpolar. The front part would have gone down. So even during the Vedic time, how it was, it has to be investigated. But this is what it says. And finally, Dhruva Meru-centric astronomical model is discussed here. The comparison of the names I have given between the Taittiriya Aranyaka and the Brahmanda Purana, all the same, both 14. The head is Dharma. Here also Dharma is head. The Aparja is Brahma, whereas in the Purana it is Uttanapada. So Uttanapada in the previously was called Brahma. That's all the difference. Kratu and Yajna. Here it is Narayana, here it is Vishnu. Samvatsara is same. That means the year they somehow understood by this particular star. More research is needed on this. Otherwise, there is slight difference in Atri and Mitra, the positions. Otherwise, the last 4 are exactly same, because this is very important. Tile, it is called Abhaya and Dhruva. Here it is called Dhruva in the Purana. The 2 models which I said in the Purana are this, the Potter's model. He says, the potter rotates the wheel. This central part, which he calls it like referring it to Dhruva, it stays there. It doesn't go out anywhere, but it moves as well as it stays. So it is a kind of a relative motion with reference to an outside observer. After all, as human observers, we look at Dhruva as only as an outside observers. This is one model. The second model is more interesting. This is the Tailepida. It says how the Ghani, this is the Medi, or what you call, this is the Meru point, this is the Dhruva. This is the central point which connects the Dhruva with this. Then there are the water juice he was telling, this connects to the bulls or to the planets. So Dhruva controls it through some kind of strings and they rotate, but this point it's stationary as well as rotating. That is what he wants to say. That is the motive force is given by this, is what he says. This is the inverse of this. Here the bulls give the motive force and rotates it. There he says no. He himself, because he is the son of Brahma, he himself gives the motive force to rotate it. This is the model. Now I'm referring to this model because this model is not there in Greece or in any other country. Now, the Ptolemy's model was different, and the Siddhantic astronomical model for the planets are different. But the Purana model is something else. The two are combined, or some part of this has been taken by the Siddhantic astronomers, but not all, because they were more mathematical. Now, what other texts are there as we go through this the 5,000 year period quickly? The concept of Shishumara is found in several other texts. As I said, in Mahabharata it comes up. The Meru is there in the Jaina text and also in the Buddha text, but they don't refer to Dhruva. They need only the Meru. Meru is actually invisible, but that concept has come down to us even to this day, because Meru is represented in the temple spires and in the shikharas and all that, as something which goes to the sky. Now, in the Mahabharata, there is a statement that Dhruva moves. Dhruva prajwalito goram apasavyam pravartate. What kind of movement? I will not go into these details, but he says that Dhruva is moving, maybe the diurnal motion. There is another interesting thing in the Mahabharata. This is how the effect of precision has been transferred to us, which may be some historical thing also combined with cosmic and astronomical issues. This is about the marriage of Draupadi, very famous thing, and you would have seen all of this, and people are so fond of looking into the TV about the Draupadi Swayamvara and the breaking of the bow, the arrow, and all of that. The Mahabharata itself has some very interesting information. Drupada, he wanted to celebrate the marriage, and he created a new small township. The township was this: Tataha Purujana Sarve Sagarodhuta Niswanaha Shishumarapuram Prapya Nyavishan Teja Parthivaha. The kings went to the competition. Where? They went to the Shishumarapura. That is the name of the town he built. Where was that? Praguttarena Nagarat Bhumi Bhage Sameshuba. It was in the northeast of Drupada's capital. That was, I think, Kosambi or some name comes, So the two things are very important. He created that, and you remember, there is a connection between Arjuna hitting the eye of the fish. So actually, the competition was about a fish which was rotating, and the eye of the fish had to be hit looking down. That was the competition. And why it was rotating, and again, it is in the northeastern direction, that was called Shishumara. The whole knowledge of the previous knowledge, the poets are writing in their own way, and this is conveyed further. Now, there are other Vedic texts called the Panchavimsha Brahmana of the Samaveda that also talks of a saman, a Sharkara saman, a song which is needed for crossing the ocean. And that saman was created by a Shishumara Rishi, it says. Can't go into the details. And it says, the legend, the Shishumara Rishi made this saman, and then he became a constellation and went to the sky to be in the Milky Way. The ocean is here, the Milky Way. Now, the Atharvaveda, the Parishishta, which belongs to 300 BC, it also refers to this. And then, the Bhadrabahu Samhita of the Jain tradition, roughly about 300 BC or so, talks of a comet which can touch Shishumara. Shishumaram yada ketuhu upagatya pradupiyat. Something is going to happen. So they knew Shishumara, but slowly this was forgotten. And the precision of the axis actually makes stars to be visible and invisible. The particularly interesting thing, because we are talking of the northern star so far, the question of southern star also came up, that is of Agastya or Canopus. Already in the Taittiriya Aranyaka I had mentioned, is very important because all the Hindus who owe allegiance to the Vedas are supposed to have come out of only the 7 rishis and Agastya. All the Gotras are supposed to have come only from these 8 people. 7 of them in the north, 1 of them in the south, that is Agastya. Now, an astronomer by name Abhyankar, so professor at Hyderabad University, no more, He worked on the visibility of Agastya and found out when Agastya would have been visible in northern India. That was possible around 4000 BC, because Agastya Canopus is in the southern horizon, southern hemisphere, will not be visible always to the people who are in the northern hemisphere. For example, in Greece, never visible. Rome, Italy, never visible. In Damascus, it was. In other words, people who are south of 36 degrees parallel only can see Agastya sometime during the year, sometime. That is generally, even now, we see Agastya or Canopus during August, September, the present season we can see. And again, that star sets somewhere in February, it will set in the west. And this was observed. And Agastya is a very important sage in Rigveda also. And we will not go into all the details. Brihasamhita wants to say something on Agastya. And during his period, Varahamihira says Agastya was rising in Simha Rashi, Kanya Rashi, and all that. Because the Rashi concept had all come. Whereas in the previous era, in the first millennium BC, there was no such concept. For example, there are two astronomers by name Parashara and Vriddhagarga. They don't use this notation at all. And Parashara clearly says Agastya rises when sun is in the star called Hasta. So he had no idea, could not give anything longitude or latitude or anything. So only in terms of stars I had to explain. And these are all found to be true. I have discussed this in my book called Parashara Tantra. I will not go into those details here. Now, the Vriddhagarga, I am coming to the modern period as quickly as possible. Vriddhagarga Jyotisha is still in manuscript form, largely in manuscript form. We are working on it at our university. We have published about 4 chapters so far. And this is a very large text belonging to about 500 BCR. It also contains more ancient information. He tells how time has to be found out, how to measure time in the seasons, how the seasons come up. He says the time has to be understood in the night. Shishumarasya Vyavritya Taramatsesya Dhimata. He gives 2 constellations. One is Shishumara, Vyavritya means is a rotation, and Taramatsya is also another constellation, actually Ursa Minor. We will come to that. By the rotation of this, you can understand time in the night, he says. These are all the initial periods of astronomy before the Siddhantic astronomy started. Siddhantic astronomy clearly was around 500 AD if you take Aryabhata as the first person, but maybe another 200, 300 years before it would have been there. And Siddhantic astronomers, if you see the text, all of them, they talk of Agasthichara. There is one chapter always called Agasthichara. Otherwise, they would be interested only in planets, eclipses, and others. Whereas with the stars, Agasthyodaya has to be given, and there is a lot of discussion on that. So that is the Vedic connection which had come through these texts. Now, Puranas mention all this as observable. Hence, we had to infer that star Tuban is a modern name, had shifted by more than a degree from the NCP. This contradiction indicates that the nomenclature Dhruva for the North Star should have gained popularity in a period before the theories of the Puranas got formulated. This again, there are so many Puranas, I can't go into all of that. The important Puranas are these, the 4 or 5. They make similar statements about Dhruva and Shishumara, but there are variant readings. So centuries before Siddhantic astronomy, there were efforts to propose a physical model, cosmological nature for the observable sky. And all this was connected to the pole star called Dhruva, which was at the top of the Mount Meru. Vriddhagarga Jyotisha also mentioned this. Now, all these Puranas, they also have described Dhruva as a visible star at the end of a constellation of 14 stars, and the same name is given. Now, it becomes a very interesting thing, because Dhruva, not just of the astronomers I was talking, not just of the Vedantins and the more ancient sages, but this became a practice in culture. For example, in the marriages, Dhruva had to be shown to the bride. Without that, the marriage is not formalized, unless there is a mantra for showing the Dhruva. And this practice is, even now it is done, the bridegroom has to show to the bride and say a particular mantra. And this comes from the Grihya Sutra text. The Grihya Sutra text, they got formulated from about 1000 BC to 500 BC. And it says Dhruvam Upatishtate, Dhruvaha Kshitihi, Dhruvaha. Okay, we will not go into those mantras. What it says is, the husband has to show to the bride the Dhruva and say that you be in my house fixed, like Dhruva is fixed, like a column which is fixed to the ground, and like the animals go around the column. It's called Kalevali. The commentator explains that, and he also says the husband has to induce confidence in the wife that you be in the center, you be fixed in my house, all others, that is the husband, the father-in-law, mother-in-law, and others will all go around you. That means obey you. So that is like an empowerment mantra in those days. Why this is important? This is culturally used, and even to this day they do. But whether which star they look at it, this becomes again another interesting question. Because if due to precision it had moved, which star to be seen? We'll come to that question. And in between, I will, because we started late, I'm running a little bit late. Aruna, is it okay? When do you want me to conclude? You have to tell me. No, you have muted your... No, I'm unable to hear you. I'm unable to hear you. Okay, tell me when I have to...
Okay, you are on mute. Okay. Iyengarji, we have actually scheduled till 12:30. We have 30 minutes more. So please take your time.
Okay, that's more than sufficient. Okay, that's more than sufficient. That's more than sufficient. Because, I wanted to run through the timeline.
Yes.
In the first millennium AD, see, the astronomers don't say much. In the second millennium AD, the astronomers talked about Dhruva, but not in the first millennium. They used the word Dhruvaka. Dhruvaka was the coordinate, the polar coordinate, which comes from the word Dhruva. But Dhruva was an imaginary point in the first millennium AD for both Aryabhata as well as for Brahmagupta. I will come to that in a minute. But the poets knew this Dhruva quite well. There is a 7th century poet by name Magha, was written a great poem, Mahakavya, called Shishupalavada. He was from Rajasthan. So in the chapter on, he discusses the seasons, because a Mahakavya has to give the season. This was in the winter season. In the winter season, in the early morning, he comes out of his house and he makes a shloka. I will not read the shloka, it's very beautiful. It is about Dhruva, Sputataram Uparishtad Alpamurte Dhruvasya. What he says is, I am able to see the sky beautifully with the small person called Dhruva, Alpamurti. But he is actually the Sharangapani or Vishnu. And like Krishna hit the Shakata or the cart, or the Shakatasura Bhanjana story of Krishna, that he hits the cart and the cart goes down. The cart of the Ursa Major of Saptarshi has been disturbed, as though Dhruva has hit it with his small leg. That is what it says. This is the early morning description in 700 CE from a place called Jalore in Rajasthan. That is where he was living. And you can see that this picture says there is in the center, there is no star in 700. The Ursa Minor or the Polaris, present day Polaris was here, and the Tuban was here, and the Ursa Major, the Saptarshis are here, the Munis are here. The Munis were becoming, losing their circumpolarity by about 600 AD. You can see that in 700 they would go down, they were no more circumpolar. But the nearest Dhruva was to them was Tuban, or the Shishumara Dhruva. So probably he knew that. But the concept of Dhruva was there. very strong in that period, that's in the first millennium AD. We come to some new things. What was the Vedic connection for this? Was it a Puranic connection? You know, our intellectual history in the country gone around two different directions. One is the Vedic tradition, completely Vedic. Even to this day, there are where the Pathshalas where they study only the Veda. So that is taken as their life goal. Whether people like it or not, they live in their poverty and they do that. Then, even around the long time back, a new lines of thought started. That is about the Vedantas, the Shastras, the secular subjects, astronomy, so many things happened. Now, the people who continued with the Vedic tradition as much as possible were the Vedantins. So the Vedantins, like the Shankaracharya followers, the Ramanuja followers, and the Madhva followers, at least in South India, they were the Vedantins. For some reason, I will not go into that. And for them, there's a very important text from Mahabharata that is called Vishnu Sahasranama. So the Vishnu Sahasranama is the 1,000 names of Vishnu. Well, anyway, we'll not go into all the details. There is one very interesting word called the Nakshatra Name. That is the 441st name also. Yeah, 441st name. And what is the meaning of Nakshatra Name was the question. All the three, they have discussed in great detail. Can't go into that. But for our purpose, Shankaracharya writes that Sa Jyotisham Chakram Brahmayan Taramayasya Shishumarasya Puchadeshe Vyavastito Dhruvaha. So in the Tara, which looks like a celestial animal, Shishumara, at the end point is Dhruva. Tasya Shishumarasya Hridaye Jyotish Chakrasya Pravartakaha Vishnuhu iti Nakshatra Neme. The person who is the star which is at the center of that constellation is called Vishnu. And he also gives the quotation, for example, Vishnu Hridayam iti Taittiriya Aranyaka, which we have already seen. So it is the Vishnu who is at the center point of the constellation of Shishumara. The tip is Dhruva, the end point is Dhruva. And these are the two people who are running the whole show of the cosmos. That is the explanation which is given. Now, the followers of the Ramanuja, the Nakshatra Nemi, more or less the same thing. In fact, Parashara Bhatta gives more details. He says, Dharma Murdhanam Ashritaha, Tachiro Dharmaha, all the Vedic quotation he gives, but it is from the Veda only. And you have to see the Vishnu or the who is in the sky in the Shishumara Mandala. That is the important thing. So they should know where to look at, irrespective of precision or whatever. Because due to precision, the constellation shifted in 8th century AD. Because Shankara was in 800 AD and Parashara and others were in 11th century, only about 1,000 years back. And very interestingly, to fix the ideas, in some of the South Indian temples, they worship Vishnu in the Shishumara Rupa. It is mostly prevalent in Karnataka, in the western coast of Karnataka, maybe because of the influence of the Madhva Sampradaya, where you can see that this is an icon of Vishnu. This is an aquatic animal that have 4 legs. This is not Matsya Avatara. See, Matsya will not have the legs shown like this. This is the Shishumara, and at the tip is Dhruva. Here, at the tip is Dhruva. I hope you are able to see that. This Vigraha is worshipped along with the Shalagramas in many of the temples in Karnataka. It's a small Vigraha which is done. So this is how they remember the Vedic connection. So this is how the cultural history develops. It's astronomical, all right, but through some twists and turns and convolutions. This was from about 1500 AD, about 500 years old. Maybe they wanted to preserve that information. Now, in a very important central question comes up about history. Are you able to see the whole picture here? The slide you are able to see? Okay. This is about Al-Biruni. You may be wondering what Al-Biruni has to do with Dhruva, what Al-Biruni has to do with my story, what I am telling here. But Al-Biruni, for all the bad things he and his masters have done to this country, of rampaging Somanath and others, Al-Biruni was a scholar and he has left so many records. Two of them is what I am presenting here. One, his famous book called On India, which has been translated into English. Many of you might have read it. That is one. Second, not very well known, is his commentary on the Yoga Sutra, that is the Patanjali, which has been translated into English and published in 1983. It's available in the Bulletin of the Oriental and African Studies by Pines and Gelblum. And Al-Biruni wrote, maybe it's a translation of a Sanskrit commentary of the Yoga Sutra in Persian or Arabic, I don't remember. And he takes up the Sutra 3.29. Many of you may know very well. Dhruve Tadgati Jnanam. This is about doing Sanyama on the various substances or the objects in creation. And you know more about that knowledge. If you do Sanyama on sun, you would know about cosmos. If you do Sanyama on some other part, then you would know something. If you do Sanyama on Dhruva, then you would get the Jnana what? Of Tadgati, Tasya Gatihi, of Dhruva's movement. And Al-Biruni, maybe he had some contact with Pandits when he was in Kashmir and near Delhi and other places. He says that this Dhruva is is the pole star, and if a person concentrates on the pole star, he would know the motion of the stars, of all the stars. That's what it says. And he would further says, this is what is called Shakwara or the Safan in his language. And it is in a complex of 14 stars. That is what he writes. This is the translation I am reading. Now he further makes fun of the Hindus. This is again very important for us. He refers in his book on India to the fish. That is what is generally called the polar fish in medieval time. That is the Ursa minors, which was called the polar fish, or as Tara Matsya, what Vridigarga calls, or what Brahmagupta and others call it as Dhruva Matsya. That polar fish, and he makes the following fun. He says the pole itself is Vishnu, the ruler of the inhabitants, the paradise, time, rising, growing, getting old. See, the Orthodox Hindu informants of Al-Biruni had only faithfully explained to him what the Vedic and Puranic texts described. Hindus of his period, for ritualistic purpose, looked at Shishumara for the Vedic Dhruva. This he explains further, makes further comments, Al-Biruni. He says, those who know the 14 stars, and 14 years will be added to his life, the length of which has been fixed beforehand. How simple these people are, this is his sentence. Among us, there are scholars who know between 1020 to 1030 stars. Should these men breathe and receive life from God only in account of their knowledge of the stars? This is his statement, comment. And he says, in connection with the fish, that is the polar fish, the Hindus tell rather ludicrous tales when speaking of the figure in which they represent this group of stars, figure of a four-footed aquatic animal, which they call Shakwara. Shakwara is only an animal, and also Shishumar. So he uses the correct one. I suppose that the latter animal is the great lizard, because the Arabs call the Dracos the lizard. It looks like a lizard, a long lizard. Anyway, for in Persia, it is called Susmar. After all, Sanskrit and Persian, they are closely connected. So Shishumara was called Susmar, which sounds much like the Indian Shishumara. Okay, anyway, this information is important for us because in 11th century AD, still people were looking for their Dhruva in a group of stars which had 14, and that was, they called it Shishumara only. It's quite possible because there was no other pole star at that time. And even there are Agama texts called, there is one text called the Mrigendra Agama. Mrigendra Agama text itself is very old, it's a Shaiva Agama text. But the commentator was 11th to 12th century from Kashmir. The context is about fixing the direction, east, west, north, south. And he says, Dhruva Pushyadi Vedena Chayaya Karadyutehe Dik Sutrani Upalabhyadav. So you can find out the direction by looking at Dhruva Pushyadi Vedana. You can look at Dhruva and then fix up the north, or you can look at the star Pushya and fix up the direction is what he is telling for his time. And the commentator very clearly says, Kena itya Dhruva Pushyadi Vedena Dhruva Tara Chaturdashakara Abdha Murtihi. He contains 14 stars. Sakala Jyotish Chakra Urdhvarti Tad Alambana Bhuto, etc. etc. No, he clearly says where you have to look to the star to fix up the north direction. Quite possible in 12th century, they fixed up the north like this, they erred because it was already in the northeast, not exactly in the north. That's a possibility. But the principle of remembering Shishumara, the older pole star, continued up to 12th century, very long after the precession came into effect. And 14th century already have showed you what Sayanacharya was telling, because all the Brahmins in the evening when they do the Sandhyapasana, evening, however they sit, they have to turn to the north to look at the Dhruva Mandala and make a prayer to the Dhruva, which I have already covered. Now we come to the 15th century. The astronomers were very strong. There was an astronomer by name Padmanabha. He developed a mechanism, a clock actually. This is a mechanical clock, or this is what is called an astrolabe. This is in the museum. Even now this can be seen. I've taken it from a publication from S.R. Sharma, who has worked on astronomical instruments. He's an authority on astronomical instruments. So what was done was there are two openings, and you identify about the Ursa Minor actually with one star, and the other one you see in a straight line in the morning. I'm sorry, in the evening. Early in the morning, the position would have shifted. This would have come on this side, this would have come on that side because of the rotation in that point, very near the pole. But in between, he made graduations. So at any time, if you know on the previous day where it was, and then you can find out the time in the night from the evening till early morning. This instrument was done called the Dhruva Brahma Yantra. Actually, this was based on what Bhaskaracharya had in his Siddhanta Shiromani very clearly discussed about the two stars which are in the Dhruva Matsya. The Dhruva, in that case, they put it in the face of a fish, not about the Shishumara. That is what they called it the Matsya. And there is a very interesting thing about that also. But before I go to that figure, since I come here, this is already the 17th century. From 15th, you come to 17th. Again, an astronomer. These are all astronomers who knew their Vedic background very well, who knew Sanskrit and all the Hindu background quite well. This astronomer was Kamalakara Bhatta. Kamalakara Bhatta was famous for his Siddhanta Tattva Viveka, a wonderful astronomical book with all his own commentary and very rational, the way that he discusses, and extremely mathematical book. Read by some people in our Sanskrit universities, but largely forgotten. His question was, he says, there is one shloka here. Chale chalepi dhruva baye. Dhruva bha, that is the Dhruva nakshatra, let it move or let it not move. Chale chalepi. So he knew that it could be moving. Dva Rashitrayam tad Dhruvaka sharastu Shatshashti bhagaha parinita naryaha Mahatpalam darshano asti yasya. The important thing is the second half. Parinita naryaha Mahatpalam darshanataha asti. Parinita narya means the bride who is getting married. I already showed you from the Griha Sutra that even to this day, during the marriage, the Dhruva has to be shown. He was in Varanasi. He was one of the great Pandits in Varanasi in the 17th century. And so there would have been a discussion on which star to see in the 17th century. So for the Parinita Nari, for the marriageable, the bride, which star has to be shown? And he gives mathematically the number. 66 degrees longitude from equinox has to be shown. So 66 degrees longitude, if you take, you don't get Thuban, you get Polaris in the 17th century. So he made a very interesting way that he writes. In any case, the bride, if she looks at this star, that will be good. Maybe they looked at both. That is a different matter because that depends on the ritual. But it is to this extent when they fixed up the cultural details, they went. And you can see that Thuban is here, whereas Polaris was here in 17th century. So this is again the effect of precision. Now, all this, why I am presenting, if it is so easy, why it should be talked about? It should have been obvious. Unfortunately not, because of the Western Indologists. The main Western Indologists, who were opposing the dating of the Hindu tradition of the Rig Veda particularly, that they did not want anything to be before 1500 BC. That's it. Whatever may be the reason. Maybe they were controlled by the Aryan invasion theory or their own supremacy or so, whatever. But there was one person, a German by name Jacobi, in 1884. He has published papers, wonderful papers are there. His argument was the following. Look, the Grihi Sutras are written in 500 BC, everybody agrees. And it is very clear in simple classical Sanskrit that the bride has to see the Dhruva. There's a fixed star. The mantra, the meaning of the mantra is that you look at the star which is fixed and all that. Why would foolishly they will do in 500 BC a fixed star? So he argued, so since the marriage ritual should have originated when Thuban was the pole star, hence Rigveda should be at least as ancient as 3000 BC was his argument. But people did not agree. For example, Whitney, Keith, Winternitz, they were the more influential people. Whitney was very near Washington. I think he was working in Johns Hopkins or somewhere. He was an influential person, but an extreme Hindu phobic. You see, Whitney writes, any star not too distant from the pole would have satisfied both the newly wedded woman and the exhibitor. There is no need of assuming that the custom is one handed down from the remote period when Alpha Draconis was really very close to the pole. He agrees. Alpha Draconis was the pole. An interval of 2,000 to 3,000 years, during which there is no mention of pole star, either in the Veda or in the Brahman. And his language, you see, the second half, the first half, it would have satisfied both the newly wedded woman and the exhibitor. What does he know about Hindu rituals? What is the role of the priest? What is the role of the others? And is that simply somebody looks at star and he decides it? Well, that is the tenor in which they have written. And he did not know. He says that there is no mention of the pole star in the Veda or Brahman. But I have showed you. You agree whether that is the Veda or not, or whether they were in the 2000 years in the Puranas, there is mention of the pole star or not. Then there was another very influential person, A.B. Keith. His books are, considered references even to this day on the religion and philosophy of the Veda and the Upanishads, published from the Harvard Oriental series. He also criticizes this is the primitive Indian wedding ritual, which is wholly unnatural. So for him, the Indian ritual, what I showed now, with all the cosmological, the astronomical, and the philosophical issues which are embedded, and that spirit is pushed into the people, it was primitive. And he says in his book, he says, there is no need to assume all of this, and it is all foolish, a passage which consists of foolish reasons. When in the Sutra literature, the existence of Dhruva, a fixed pole star, is alleged. And he also says, pole star appears only in the Grihi Sutras, nowhere else. This is a textbook studied even to this day all over the world on Indian religion. Please note it. And it's very unfortunate because Jacobi did not look into the Taittiriya Aranyaka. He did not collect all the information. Whitney and Keith, they were so much prejudiced, even if they had seen, they would not have mentioned it. Now, however, the Yajurvedic text, which I have already quoted, the Taittiriya Aranyaka and the Maitraniya Samhita, they knew something about the pole star, they knew about the Shishumara constellation. And another Vedic text, the Ekagni Kanda, which is a ritualistic text, this also gives all the mantras to be used in the various rituals. There also this comes up. So the quality of Dhruva's star is said to be fixed. Prized as the Methi are the fixed column to which the nakshatras are bound. This is important. And this either happens for the present day pole star, that is Alpha Minor, or to Thuban, which was in 3000 BC. So the same thing I have put up as a timeline here. This is the small 5,000 year sector which I was mentioning. So Taittiriya Aranyaka around 3000 BC. This is more or less my last slide. Then, Shankaracharya, 2000 BC, Maitrayani Aranyaka, around 1800 BC. Then the Puranas come up here. I have not marked the Puranas. Adi Shankara around 800 CE, that is crossing the 0 point. Then Al-Biruni in about 1020. Then Kamalakara here, somewhere here. And the present day pole star is this 2000 AD. So we have had a very rich, somewhat confusing, complex cultural history, and that has been controlled by this simple thing, that is the precision of the axis of the earth. So this is the summary. I will not read the summary, but I will show you again a small strip which one of my students has prepared, because he showed this as the Shishumara, the whale, and here is the Ursa Minor, and this is the Saptarshi Mandala. So from minus 3500 to present day, has created an animation. He's an IT student. I hope this will run. And how the situation changes. See, minus 3500 is still not at the pole. Very near, somewhere here. This is the tip. This is the pucha, the last part. And you can see 3000, minus 3000, it has come here. 2600 is going out, still not very far away. Minus 2000, quite far away, but this is going near and near. Minus 1100, minus 700. This is 0. There was no pole star here. That is the Purana period, you can say. Then slowly we are coming to the Al-Biruni's period. Still there was nothing. But this had gone far away. And this is 1900 where the pole star came to this, the present day pole star. And the Shishumara has taken a different shape going towards northeast, not the north. So if somebody thinks this is north, actually there would be an error. This would be more northeast than north. That is in the 12th century, the Agama people who did it. Let me see. Okay. Yeah. There are two, this is my last slide. There are two North Pole stars are known in the cultural heritage of Indian astronomy. The two figures I showed. Dhruva, son of Uttanapada, in the Puranic legend, was originally the Vedic pole star. The other one was the Ursa Minor, the Polaris or Alpha Ursa Minor from 1500 AD. So from 3000 BC, somewhere in between forgot, and there is so much of memory loss. But here and there something has picked up, and finally, we end up with the story of two pole stars. Thank you. I mean, that's all what I wanted to say. There are any questions, so I'll be able to answer.
Thank you so much, Iyengarji, for your enlightening and amazing speech, lecture. And now we can take some questions if you have.